Addicted to Monsters, Chapter 3, Chapter 3, Part 5. So, if I had to give this one a title, I would maybe title it Strange Things for Change. If you've been listening, then you know exactly where I'm headed with this. So, the first husband, we'll call him Romeo. He was involved in some things that I thought was pretty shady, but under the guise of ministry in Houston. I never had any proof of this, but this next thing I definitely did have proof of. So he's trying to build his life and figure himself out. He now has me locked down, which now I'm looking back, I understand why he proposed to me and had to lock it down, because he there was something he needed from that, and I agree, because there was something I needed too, and it was a very unhealthy attachment. So before we move in together, and have our nuptials and all that stuff, shortly before then, I think what drove him to try to push to marry me was actually this. He wound up having another experience aside from whatever that Houston stuff was, where he got hired at a church in Florida. It was some, pretty large ministry of the Caucasian persuasion. And I don't recall the church name, which is probably a good thing. But he got hired to be their youth pastor. And he went there, and it seemed to be like a really big thing to celebrate and very promising. And I'm like, okay, that's great. Congratulations. He's doing his thing. I'm doing my thing in college, trying to figure it out. Really floundering, to be honest. But whatever. I'm there trying to figure it out. And but he wasn't there long when one day he calls me crying. I mean, crying. And he just says he's on the road and he's headed back home. And I'm just like, okay, what happened? And he presented himself to be the victim. And I remember him telling me the story and saying to me, and even then something didn't feel right or sit right. But I'm a kid. I'm naive. I don't really have experience in this. And I also don't have like this source of like kind of wisdom to bounce this also off of either. I remember feeling mostly sorry for him. So he's telling me the story of how it was Super Bowl Sunday and he was going to the store to get some food and snacks for the game, and that some pretty lady approached him in the parking lot, and she said, "Do you want a date?" And he didn't understand what that meant. And I forgot how he presented it to me, but somehow he was able to present it to me as in some girl was coming on to him and he just flirted back, but he didn't really mean anything by it. And the next thing he knows, he's in handcuffs. Now, me being who I was, a very naive, kid at the time, I'm just like, man, that is so messed up. And then, he says that the church bailed him out, but because he was on the news, they had to fire him and let him go. And he's just so distraught. And I believe this. I believe this for well over a year. But then after we got married and we started moving in, and you really don't know someone until you start living with them, I started noticing that he had this habit of lying. I noticed it a bit in college, but it didn't really affect me until we were living together. He just would lie all the time about anything. And I don't know if there's a term for this or not, like stuff that didn't even need to have a lie. Like I know one time later on, as an example, we moved to Texas and we were working with a realtor to try to buy a home. And thank God we did not buy a home together. And the realtor was like, "Oh, your last name is such and such. I know this guy with this last name and he played football. Is he related to you?" And he goes, "Yeah, he's my cousin." And he starts just making up this whole and I'm looking at and I'm like, dude, like, he just lies. He just lies all the time. But but by this time, it's really just getting on my nerves. So now, typical black woman fashion, when we start turning on that FBI hat, we're going to find everything. So by this time, before we even get good into the second year of marriage, I know I'm sick of him always being a liar about everything, and also not having any like personal accountability for anything. And I'm like, oh my God, who the F did I marry? Like, whoa, like, and I'm starting to come out of that fog of, oh, I'm so in love, the newness of the, great sex, which I didn't have anything to compare it to, but the newness of the great sexual experience and the me being with somebody who's treating me completely different than my dad and all that has worn off now. So now we're into the reality of it. And I'm just like, okay, I'm not happy. I'm not happy. This is some bull crap. And I'm married to a preacher. Like, I don't want nothing to do with the church. How am I married to a preacher? Like, this is just, ugh. And he's just as hypocritical as my dad, but just in a different way. So, I'm now, like, all the different things that I'm concerned about and I don't trust, I'm going back and I'm verifying. I'm making phone calls. So I find the church again, and I called the church, and I spoke to the man that hired him. And I said, something's been really bothering me for a while, and I just want to know the truth, because I don't feel like he's ever told me the truth about this. By this time, my husband had been arrested a couple of times for several different things, and it was always he was the victim, that, it was an old ticket and they didn't have to arrest him for this. So now I'm just thinking to myself, okay, I need to get to the bottom of everything, and then I need to start making some real decisions. Like, do I want to stay married to this guy? Do I want to leave him? How am I going to cope? And I definitely did some things that were not honorable. I definitely, I cheated on him. I cheated on him with my best friend from high school, and that's how I wound up conceiving my first child. The difference between him and I is, whatever he was doing and the things he was doing, he couldn't have no baby. So everybody, to this day, they look at me like I'm the devil that broke up the marriage, but it was broken up way before then. So there's that. But I never really cared either. Anybody who would look at me like I was some she-devil who broke his heart, I just would think to myself, bless your heart, which is a dumbass. You have no idea. You have no idea. But yeah, that was definitely, dishonorable. I definitely, during that time we were separated, and I did plan to divorce him, but I didn't. I did not divorce him. So I got pregnant during that time, and we had to have some serious conversations about that as well. And I did let him know right away, and we decided, and he decided he did not want to get a test. He did not want us to get divorced. He didn't care if the baby was his or not. He just wanted to stay together. And then here I am thinking, oh, that's so sweet. That's so great. That's so wonderful. And we wound up, reconciling, staying together, and moving. But moving away does not take you away from your problems. You got to solve them. You can't run from them, because everywhere you go, there you are. So we still had problems, the other places that we lived as well, the same problems. Him not wanting to get out of bed, him calling into work, him getting fired from jobs for just being, just kind of shiftless. Him being a big mama's boy, me not having control over the way that I handled my frustration, a lot of things. But anyway, let's go back to the church. I called that church, and I just said, my husband is pastor such and such, and he told me this story about when he was there. And I said, I just want to know, like, did this really happen, and why did you guys fire him? And the pastor there, he did not want to, men stay on code so hard. No matter what, they stay on code. I got to give it to y'all, ex-wives. He did not want to rat him out. He said to me, I don't think it's my place to tell. That was telling it right there. He said, I really think that you should do your own research, and I think you should ask him, and he needs to tell you the truth himself. And I said, he won't. He will not. I've asked him several times over the past year or two, and he's sticking to his story. I know he's lying to me. And he just said, it's not my place to tell. He said, but, you can look it up. And I did. It was on the news. You cannot get arrested for solicitation of a prostitute, and that arrest cannot stick unless you actually show intent. Like that, it was a sting. They did round up people, including him, and he was not innocent. And this was something that had to be expunged, and we talked about that, and I kept saying, you need to handle this. You need to handle this. You need to handle whatever this addiction and this issue is, it was definitely an addiction, which totally turned me off. Like after that, like, I don't want you to touch me. Like, I felt disgusting. Like, you got this thing. You need to handle this. And I also said, hey, like, we have Legal Shield. You need to get this expunged. And he told me that he would, and that he did, and that wound up being a lie as well. So now we move to like one of the biggest opportunities that we both have in a really big metro, and things are going great, and he's got a great job, and we get this great condo and everything. And then, within a couple of months, he's coming home, and he's crying to me, and he's telling me he got fired because he lied on his job application and said that he had never had some criminal history. And of course they're going to look it up, and you never got it expunged. You never got it handled. And now you've effectively ruined your life, my life, and this baby girl that we both decided that we were going to raise together. I know that later on he told people that he was so surprised or whatever. No, he wasn't. I told him right away when I was pregnant, because I had so many things to weigh, and abortion was on the table, as well. And that was a decision that we both made, and he was adamant about that. We're going to have this baby. He wants it, and we will raise her together, and we will move. And that he never, and the day that I gave birth to her, we had her at the hospital, I asked